Hi, Tom. Thank you so much for joining me today on our edition of Breakfast with Boyden. And I'm sorry I was remiss in sending you a Boyden mug, but I will absolutely pop one in the mail to you.
Can't wait. Can you send me an egg sandwich at the same time? Because
Uh,
that's I would much appreciate that more than the mug. But I can't wait for the mug as well.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for joining me today. And as we talk a bit about trends in the industry, you have 30 years in the consulting fundraising space and certainly a wealth of knowledge, I imagine, as you serve as the vice chairman of CCS Fundraising. I would love for you to share just a bit about your background and family business, and then we'll get into a few of the questions as well.
Thanks, Lisa. It's scary that you say 30 years. So I'm claiming I started in elementary school, but I did not. We're so lucky to be part of this firm, CCS. You know, our firm actually this year is celebrating our 75th anniversary,
Wow.
which is super exciting. We were one of the kind of early members of what was known as the American Association of Fundraising Council, that's now the Giving Institute. And in those more than 7 decades, we've worked with so many cherished clients. It's been quite a run for our firm, and thankfully we have just a tremendous and broad leadership team that hopefully we're going to continue for decades to come. Yeah, it is in a sense a family legacy. It's no longer just a family firm. We're still privately held, of course, but there is legacy in the firm in all of its leadership. So there are a couple of names at CCS that are familiar to folks, the Happies and the Kissanes. And my dad actually started with the firm in 1952 when the firm only had about a half a dozen people.
Wow.
And he worked for just a short time, 54 years, if you can imagine. And then my brother Bob joined in 1979, and I joined in 1989. And a bunch of other of my 9 brothers and sisters made their way in and out of the firm over time. So, it's great. It's great. And fortunately, our clients trust us, and we really appreciate the work that you do, Lisa, in terms of providing great solutions to all of our colleagues, you know, trying to match nonprofits with talented leaders, because your role and your firm's role is paramount for the continued success of philanthropy and fundraisers. So thank you.
You're welcome. So as a leader in advancement consulting, we would love to learn more about trends. We see
Sure.
a lot of trends out there. What are you seeing as some of the trends in advancement, in hiring, any of the above?
Sure. There are a bunch. I will stay maybe with 2 things. One is just sort of giving trends for just a second. And I'm not going to repeat all the things that everybody knows from the Giving USA and all those great reports that come from the Chronicle of Philanthropy, but sort of a little insight, if that's okay, to be a bit bold. We're seeing significant shifts in terms of the motivation of donors, very much towards solution-based giving. So what we mean by that is that donors are quite interested in the pressing needs and promising opportunities of a nonprofit, and how they themselves could be catalytic in either fostering a founding mission or helping, quote, solve a problem. We see it very clearly, especially in high net wealth giving. And the Chronicle of Philanthropy produces reports every year, but you're seeing over the past half decade that the vast majority of the gifts today are not to capital. I'm not saying capital is not worthy, it's extremely worthy, but it's for programmatic initiatives, for endowment, for financial aid, for research. So there, you know, donors are very much interested in accelerating discovery for research, offering access to education, right? Driving justice through diversity and equity, responding to conditions of the planet in terms of the environment and climate crisis, but also particularly interested in innovation. So those are some of the things that we're seeing in terms of the deep interest of donors. In terms of hiring, we see an extremely talented potential workforce here. Philanthropy has been found, right? 25 years ago, there were 750,000 nonprofits. Today, there's 1.2 million, I think even 1.3 million.
Wow.
So the growth is extraordinary. By all predictions, giving in the US will probably exceed $500 billion this year. It's a significant impact on the GDP. It's huge. So if you listed, you know, different sectors, philanthropy is near the top with $500 billion.
Wow.
And so the need for talented people, and we're seeing it from all areas. We're seeing, of course, people from transferable positions, right? Whether it's from teaching or sales or the military. You're seeing so many higher education institutions establishing fundraising management criteria and courses. And so you're seeing a deep interest even right out of school. And so the trends that we're seeing there, of course, are maybe two or three things. Mission-oriented people trying to do mission work, no question. We're seeing some challenges in retention and recruiting, like most industries are feeling. Our supply chain in this business is just as challenging as the supply chain in so many other businesses. And yes, I mean, you think about a nonprofit, a sizable number of the nonprofits, especially the mid-sized ones, are probably under-resourced in terms of personnel. And so there might be some stressful situations that our colleagues are in because the demands are so high, right? So as boards become more educated, as chief executive officers want to drive philanthropic revenue, the pressure's on.
Absolutely.
So I think we're seeing a little bit of that making its way toward the development shops, for sure.
So let's talk about that a little bit. There is a tremendous stress on fundraisers right now. Budget cuts. There are some advancement shops that haven't returned to pre-COVID size and scope, adding more pressure on existing fundraisers and alumni relations professionals. People are now asked to wear multiple hats, or, as you were saying, recruiting is really difficult. So sometimes there are, where there should be 10 people doing major gifts, there are 3 because there are so many, vacant positions. What is your thought about the stress of fundraisers and, kind of thinking about how leaders, CEOs of foundations or presidents or vice presidents, CFOs, how are they assisting fundraisers? And, have you seen any changes?
I have some encouraging changes there, Lisa, in terms of leadership. So go back to the statistic real quick about maybe 750,000 nonprofits 25 years ago, now moving 2. So what that tells us is that we need almost twice the number of board members, right, to lead these initiatives. And so it's really important that these board members are onboarded, right, that are recruited and welcomed into a nonprofit and fully understand the scope of their role, of their new vocation, right? Certainly there's governance and there's fiduciary responsibilities, but if they could be onboarded, recognizing that philanthropy is as equally as important as those other priorities, it's a start. And so we're seeing board members more interested in partnering with the development shops, primarily as access and networking. And we absolutely see very evident that sort of the new generation of institutional leaders, the executives, view fundraising as a clear priority. No question about it. And boards are vetting candidates in those leadership positions to see if there's an interest by the CEO. And I use that term CEO, sort of like the royal CEO, as an important part of their position. Now, yes, I think what we have to figure out, right, is the link between assuming philanthropy is a priority and then investing in the development and advancement shops, right? So just the same way, Lisa, that a really good fundraiser understands the journey of a donor and doesn't attempt just a quick transactional gift, but takes the time to inform the potential donor about your mission, right, and encourages them to invest in their nonprofit to help them with a particular cause. It takes a little bit of time and an understanding by the donor before they make a commitment. So we like to encourage our colleagues in the development space to take the time to introduce what it takes for a development office to be successful, what the resources need to be, benchmarking the different development offices so that the executives who make these decisions, the CFOs who provide the counsel, the board members who make the ultimate investments, understand the cost per dollar raised, what a $20 million nonprofit development shop should look like, the investment in technology, the investment in stewardship, the investment in a multi-channel development shop. So
great.
let's not rush to just say, hey, I need 2 more people, because the
Right.
question is going to be, we don't have the money, or I need 3 more people. Why? Well, we want to raise more money. Take the time to build your case before you ask for, quote, the gift. And that could help. That could help.
So much sense. So let's talk about one, sort of spot within the advancement spectrum, and that's annual giving.
Yeah.
We are really seeing a change and a shift in annual giving. We are looking for, as recruiters, we are looking for a lot of the annual fund leaders, and it's almost like they've vanished.
Yeah.
And I know it is a very popular role that we recruit for, but I feel like it's changed over the years. When I graduated, it was more direct mail,
Mhm,
getting an
mhm.
actual letter, getting a cold call from the phonathon group. And now it is so much more. There's email campaigns and texting campaigns, analytics and artificial intelligence, and so many other things. So have you seen a change or a shift in annual giving?
Yeah, I mean, I'm empathetic to what you're offering, because we value annual gift professionals immensely,
Oh,
immensely.
totally agree.
Um, so, a couple of things. I'm not sure the brand is good, right?
Interesting.
Like annual giving, like just that notion of annual giving doesn't seem to me to tie to the mission or the promise of a nonprofit. It tells me you're asking for an annual gift without a purpose. And so, you know, the annual giving has been, in our world for decades. So I think the first thing you have to think about is sort of maybe reimagine even what the intention of annual giving is, right? And simple things like the just literally the brand or the purpose around it. So, like, what is annual giving supposed to do, right? Number one, for some donors, it's their first entry point to a nonprofit.
Absolutely.
Number two, an annual gift is the step towards something even bigger. So, for instance, if you're a college or a hospital, a cultural institution, you're conducting strategic plans. From your strategic plans, usually some kind of a major gift or capital campaign.
Right.
Your annual gift has to be in near pristine shape in order to conduct a significant capital campaign. So let's not lose sight that this is the important building blocks towards something even more significant. And yes, perhaps several decades ago, it was almost exclusively direct mail. But as you mentioned, it's so integrated, it's so much more sophisticated. If you're looking for people who want to be part of annual giving or may overlook it, it's a great either career starter, but more importantly, it's where you learn the best practices in fundraising. So as folks pursue this sort of world of philanthropy, certainly they want to be major gift officers or managers, but in order to be highly effective major gift officers and managers, you need to know the fundamentals of annual giving, because that's when you meet the donor perhaps even more often. And so maybe the branding will help, right? I mean, you think about the cultural institutions, they do such a marvelous job, especially in their membership materials,
Right.
sort of declaring what your gift does, right? So if you go to any cultural institution and you're a member of it, they will invite you into a sort of giving society, a patron society. And they do a very fine job explaining the different levels, the financial levels. They add a name to it that makes sense. And then they encourage you to sort of ladder up. And so there's some thinking perhaps around how you just reimagine the annual fund. Give it a name, right?
It's
Give it
really
something.
fascinating.
Yeah. Like what is annual giving is sustaining the work that you do. And so change it. I know that's simple,
No,
probably
it's
ridiculous to some, but sometimes it's about the brand.
absolutely.
Like breakfast with Boyden. I mean, that's a good plan.
I'll have to be honest. Wendy came up with the name.
Way to go, Wendy.
She's very creative. Let's talk about one last thing, which is always a hot topic, which is
Yep.
diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And, how does this play with current trends? We certainly, as recruiters, see a decrease in people of color in philanthropy. And we are, as a practice, always trying to look at job descriptions and making sure that we have the right mission fit, but also making sure we are making this expansive enough to include people of color in our pools as we present them to hiring managers. And for us, we have about 30-40% of all of our placements do identify as people of color, and we're excited about that, but this could be so much more. What are you seeing as some trends in the DEI space?
Yeah, a couple things. I think there is at least I'm hoping what I'm seeing is an even more deeper understanding of DEI, and that it's not just something. It's not an initiative. It's not a program. It's not an aspiration in the sense, but it should, obviously it should be bedrock, right? It should be foundational to a nonprofit. Once that's fully absorbed and serves as the underpinning of the rest of your work, perhaps sort of the practical side of these things become a little bit easier or a little bit more understood. That's number one. Number two, the vast majority of the nonprofits declare that they are in the DEI space. The vast majority of nonprofits are trying to expand their donor base and inviting DEI donors and prospects into their donor family. So we would encourage, of course, that fundraising professionals, right, match that aspiration. And so, if you're trying to pursue donors who represent or have represented in the DEI community, you'd want DEI fundraisers who understand it culturally, the trends, the motivations, the behaviors, the backgrounds, the economies around all of it. And that's from a very practical sense. We work with a number of the HSBCs, with NAACP, with National Urban League, La Raza, unbelievable organizations, all incredibly impactful in their work. They have seen, since the summer of 2020, with the tragic death of George Floyd, more interest. Sadly, it took that to provoke all this, to prompt all this. We are seeing significant gifts in this space, massive gifts. We hoped for it in the same way that we are seeing significant giving interests in public health and in disparities. The pandemic once again illustrated the disparities in health, sadly. And so you think about the summer of 2020 and what that has done for philanthropy in terms of heightening these two particular issues among many, many pressing issues of this country. You've seen it witnessed in just a couple of years, increased giving by individuals, more emphasis from corporations. The Council of Foundations, roughly 800 foundations, agreed to an immediate pivot in this space, breaking their cycles of giving, breaking their giving guidelines. And so we are seeing tremendous interest in this space. So for your world, my world, in terms of our colleagues, if you're witnessing less people of color and less diverse candidates, that's really unfortunate. And we have got to turn that around immediately.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah, no question.
I agree. And last but not least, what advice might you have for someone who is contemplating getting into advancement? And that's anywhere from annual giving, planned gifts, major gifts, alumni relations, data analytics. What advice might you have?
For someone that's getting into this business?
Yes.
Step one, this is a real job.
Right.
This is a real job. We may not have MD behind our name or ESQ behind our name. Some of our esteemed colleagues may have PhDs or CFREs, which is great. But this is a real job. You are connected to America's great institutions, America's truly great institutions. You have access to volunteers and board members who are deeply devoted to this. You have a very important job. You are driving the missions of these nonprofits. Again, this summer or this June, the Giving Institute will, give its report on annual fundraising revenue.
I can't wait.
Right, can't wait. It's almost as good as Christmas morning. Anyway, it's probably going to be $500 billion, right? Last year was what, 480 billion, so it's going to be $500 billion. It's a huge industry, 1.2 million in this sector, thousands of professional jobs. So what do you want to do? One, besides just recognizing that it's a real job, you have to practice at it. There are best practices. You need to assume the role that you are a practitioner. And so you want to seek the advice of great people like yourself who know this area really well. You want to try to secure a mentor immediately. You want to connect with the mission itself. So you're not just in the office. If you work for a human service organization, spend a few days with the program people. If you're at a university, audit some classes, right? If you're at a hospital, spend time in the emergency room. Get close to the people who are the champions of nonprofit work and the folks who are the recipient of nonprofit work. So take it seriously. It's a real job. Practice at it, get a mentor, and get close to the mission. And if you get close to the mission, you're never going to leave that place because your heart wanted you to get into this place. Now your brain and your heart want you to stay in the place. And that's what I'd like to do. And don't visit. My dad used to say, we don't want visitors in this profession. People that pop in and pop out. Right. You want people who are going to stay and treat it with the respect, the same respect that the founding mission of the nonprofit that you're joining was built on. And so that's what I would say, Reese. I know I probably gave some homily right there. Forgive me if I did.
That was great.
So anyway, now we're going to pass the basket after that homily. I apologize. But that's kind of fun, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, we are talking about fundraising after all.
That's right.
Well, thank you so much for.
Where's my mug? Lisa, when am I getting my mug? I got to get my mug.
I know. My fault. I will.
I get my egg sandwich. All right.
Maybe not that, but definitely the mug.
Did you hear my Queen's accent come out there for a second? I tried so hard, to speak with a non-regional accent. Where's my mug? Give me my mug. So, but that's me.
Okay, I have my Boston accent.
There you go. Lisa, great to be with you this morning. Thanks for your leadership.
Thank you
leadership
so
and the everyone in executive search and to all of our partners in this work. Great work.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.